An entitled millionaire boy humiliated the housekeeper in an elevator until he got stuck with her. A Monday morning began like any other in the Imperium building, the most expensive condominium in the city. But what no one imagined was that, on that day, inside a simple elevator, a life lesson would forever change the perspective of a spoiled boy and a humble woman. Gabriel was only 10 years old, but he already carried the arrogance of someone who never had to fight for anything in life. Son of Rodrigo Mendes, a billionaire real estate magnate, the boy grew up believing the world revolved around him. And why wouldn't he? Since birth, everything he wanted appeared in front of him as if by magic. The apartment where he lived occupied the entire 45th floor of the building, 7,500 SQFT of pure luxury, with a view of the whole city. Gabriel had his own Batman-themed room, complete with a Batmobile-shaped bed and a whole wall that turned into a movie screen. He also had a closet larger than many people's living rooms, filled with designer clothes that cost more than many people's annual salaries. But what most fueled Gabriel's arrogance was how everyone in the condo treated him. The doorman always greeted him with exaggerated reverence. "Good morning, young Gabriel. How is the future businessman today?" The building manager made a point of stopping whatever he was doing to talk to him. Even the other residents, successful adults, bowed to the importance of the Mendes family. Gabriel learned early on that there were two categories of people in the world: the important ones, like him and his family, and the others, those who existed only to serve. And among those others was Rosa. Rosa Silva was 52 years old and had been working as a housekeeper for the Mendes family for almost 5 years. She was a short woman with brown skin, marked by the sun and the hardships of life. Her calloused hands told stories of hard work, and her eyes, always kind, hid worries that Gabriel could never imagine. She woke up every day at 4:30 in the morning in her small house on the outskirts of the city, taking 3 different buses to arrive at the Imperium building at 7 a.m. sharp. Her salary barely supported the 3 children she raised alone since her husband abandoned her 8 years ago. Even so, Rosa never let hardship affect her dedication to work or her faith in better days. For Gabriel, however, Rosa was practically invisible. She was always there cleaning, organizing, preparing his favorite meals, but he never saw her as a real person. She was just another object in the house, like the television or the sofa, useful but of no real importance. On that particular Monday, Gabriel had woken up especially irritable. His father had an important business meeting that day and had demanded that he dress appropriately to accompany him to the office after lunch. "A future businessman needs to know how to behave in a corporate environment," Rodrigo always said. So at 10 a.m., Gabriel was impeccably dressed in a tailored black suit, a starched white shirt, and a black Italian silk tie. His genuine leather shoes were so shiny they looked like mirrors. He was a perfect miniature of a millionaire executive, and he knew it. The problem was that Gabriel hated wearing a suit. The tie bothered him, the jacket was hot, and he preferred his casual clothes 1,000 times over, but he knew he couldn't go against his father. So he endured the discomfort while fueling his irritation. Rosa was finishing tidying the living room when she saw him heading for the door, all dressed up. "You look so handsome, young Gabriel," she said with a genuine smile. "Just like your father when he was younger." Gabriel didn't even respond. He considered it a waste of time to talk to her. Rosa was wearing her navy blue uniform, impeccably clean and ironed, with a white apron that she had embroidered small flowers on the edges, a touch of delicacy she had brought from home to brighten the simple uniform. "Do you need anything before you leave?" she asked, always helpful. "I need you to stop talking to me," Gabriel replied coldly, adjusting his tie with impatience. "My father doesn't pay you to chat." Rosa lowered her head, accustomed to the boy's rudeness, and went back to work. Minutes later, Gabriel left the apartment and pressed the elevator button with irritation. He wanted to go down to the garage and wait in the car until his father was ready. At least there he could loosen his tie and relax a bit before the boring meeting that awaited him. When the elevator doors opened, Gabriel found Rosa, who was carrying a bag with cleaning products and her lunchbox. She had gone down to get some misplaced supplies. "What are you doing here again?" Gabriel asked, visibly annoyed. "I need to get more cleaning products from the storage room, young Gabriel. Your mother called from her trip, and asked me to make everything spotless for when she gets back. Gabriel rolled his eyes and entered the elevator, pressing the lobby button. Rosa respectfully pressed the basement button. As soon as the doors closed, Gabriel felt that familiar sense of superiority. The contrast was stark. Him, elegantly dressed in his designer suit, representing the power and money of the Maid'S family, and her, in her simple blue uniform and white apron, carrying cleaning products and a dented lunchbox. The difference between them had never seemed so obvious. Gabriel, despite the discomfort of his formal clothes, felt powerful in that suit. It was like wearing armor that constantly reminded him of who he was, or at least who he believed he was. The elevator began to descend slowly, and Gabriel noticed that Rosa was avoiding looking directly at him. She was leaning against the opposite corner, holding her bag and lunchbox tightly, as if she wanted to take up the least amount of space possible in that environment. It was then that Gabriel, bored and irritated with the uncomfortable clothes, decided this would be the perfect moment to have a little fun. After all, why not remind the housekeeper of her exact place? The suit made him feel more like an adult, more powerful, and he wanted to exercise that authority. Gabriel looked Rosa up and down, his eyes scanning every detail of the woman's simple appearance. The silence in the elevator lasted only a few seconds before he decided to break it in the worst possible way. "You know, Rosa?" He began with a tone of false friendly conversation. "I was just thinking something." Rosa looked up, surprised that he was speaking to her. Gabriel rarely addressed her, and when he did, it was usually to give an order or complain about something. "Yes, young Gabriel," she replied politely, without suspecting what was to come. "Have you ever stopped to think about how different we are?" Gabriel adjusted his tie with a malicious smile on his lips. "Like, look, I'm all dressed up here in an imported suit, a silk tie, going to a business meeting with my father. And you?" He paused dramatically, letting his gaze wander over Rosa's blue uniform again. "And you're there in that little housekeeper uniform, carrying cleaning products and a dented lunchbox." Rosa felt a tightness in her chest, but remained silent. She knew that tone of voice well. It was the same one Gabriel used when he wanted to hurt someone just because he could. "You want to know what else I notice?" Gabriel continued, clearly enjoying Rosa's growing discomfort. "It's that you always smell like cleaning products. Like always. It's as if the smell sticks to you and never leaves." Rosa lowered her head in embarrassment. It was true that the smell of chemicals lingered on her clothes and skin, even after she bathed. It was an inevitable mark of her job, something that constantly reminded her of her condition. "It must be kind of annoying, right?" Gabriel went on, feigning concern. "I imagine when you get home, your children must smell that too. I bet they get embarrassed when their friends come to visit." The words hit Rosa like punches. She thought of her children, Miguel, 16, Ana, 14, and Pedro, 11. Were they really ashamed of her? Did the smell of work she carried embarrass them in front of their friends? The elevator continued to descend slowly, and Gabriel perfectly perceived the effect of his words. Rosa had shrunk even more into the corner, holding her lunchbox so tightly that her knuckles were white. "You know what's funny?" Gabriel laughed softly. "My suit cost more than you make in 6 months. And look, it's not even the most expensive one I have. I have about 15 suits in my closet. Some I haven't even worn yet." Rosa swallowed hard. 6 months of her salary. She did quick mental calculations. That would pay her house rent for half a year, or buy food for her family for a long time. "It must be strange for you," Gabriel continued with calculated cruelty, "working in a house where a tie costs more than you make in a week. Like this tie here." He touched the black silk accessory. "It cost $160. Just the tie, Rosa, $160. Rosa's eyes filled with tears she fought to hold back. $60 was almost half of what she earned per month. With that money, she could buy school supplies for her 3 children and still have some left over for new clothes. And that lunchbox there? Gabriel pointed to the aluminum container in her hands. "I bet it's rice, beans, and a little piece of meat, right? Always the same thing. It must be kind of sad to always eat such simple food." Rosa thought about the contents of her lunchbox. It really was rice, beans, and a small piece of chicken left over from Sunday. She always brought little food to save money, preferring that her children ate better at home. "You know what I'm having for lunch today?" Gabriel asked rhetorically. I'm going to a Japanese restaurant at the mall. One dish there costs $40. $40, Rosa, just one dish. The elevator reached the 20th floor and continued its descent. Rosa prayed mentally for it to reach the lobby soon, so she could get out of that suffocating environment. But what impresses me most, Gabriel said, now with a more evident cruel smile, is how you manage to wake up every day, knowing you're going to clean other people's houses, wash bathrooms, mop floors, and still come here with a smile on your face. Gabriel paused, observing Rosa's red face. Like if I were you, I think I'd die of shame. Imagine having to explain to people what your job is. Oh, I clean rich people's houses. How embarrassing. Rosa felt as if each word was a stab. She had always been proud of her work, no matter how simple. She knew she was honest, that she took good care of the Maid'S family, that she had never missed a day. But Gabriel's words made it all seem insignificant and humiliating. And to think you're going to spend the whole day cleaning up what my family and I make a mess of, Gabriel laughed. Like, I'll go use the bathroom, leave everything messy, and you'll go clean up afterward. It's almost as if you exist just to clean up our messes. The 10th floor passed. Rosa counted the numbers, desperate for this torture to end. Oh, and one more thing, Gabriel said, as if he had remembered something important. You know you're never going to get out of this life, right? Like, your children will probably end up working just like you. That's how it works. The poor stay poor, the rich stay rich. It's the law of life. These words were the cruelest of all. Rosa worked 16 hours a day, precisely, so her children would have better opportunities. Miguel was working hard in school to get a scholarship. Ana dreamed of being a nurse, and Pedro was the smartest in his class. Your children are going to grow up and find out that life is hard, Gabriel continued, relentless. That it's no use dreaming big when you were born to be small. Rosa finally looked up and stared directly at Gabriel. For a moment, he saw a sadness so profound in those eyes that he almost felt uncomfortable, but he quickly pushed away any feeling of remorse. Why are you saying these things? Rosa asked with a choked voice. Because I can, Gabriel answered simply, and because it's the truth. Someone needs to remind you of your place in this world. The elevator passed the 3rd floor. It was almost at the lobby, but Gabriel had not yet finished his display of cruelty. And you know what, Rosa? Gabriel said as the elevator passed the 2nd floor. I think you should thank me. Rosa looked at him with confusion, still trying to hold back the tears that insisted on appearing in her eyes. That's right, thank me, Gabriel repeated, adjusting his jacket with arrogance. Because thanks to my family you have a job. Without us you would be on the streets in need. We are the ones who pay your salary, who give your children food. Rosa took a deep breath, trying to maintain her composure. She knew she couldn't respond sharply. She needed that job. So what are you waiting for? Gabriel insisted. Aren't you going to thank me? Where are your manners? I'm grateful for the job, young Gabriel, Rosa managed to murmur. I didn't hear you right, Gabriel said, cupping his hand to his ear in a theatrical gesture. Speak louder. I'm grateful for the job, Rosa repeated a little louder, feeling humiliated. There, that wasn't so hard. Gabriel smiled with satisfaction. That's how things work. You people like you need to know how to be grateful. You need to understand that you depend on people like us. At that moment, when the elevator was between the 1st floor and the lobby, something completely unexpected happened. A strange noise echoed through the cabin, as if some mechanism had broken. The elevator gave a sudden jolt, swayed from side to side for a few seconds. Then it stopped completely. The lights flickered twice and went out, leaving only the emergency light on, a weak, yellowish light that gave the small space a haunted look. Gabriel, who had been leaning against the wall talking with such arrogance, lost his balance with the jolt and almost fell. His heart raced immediately. What was that? He asked, his voice a little higher than normal. Rosa, who was used to difficult situations, remained calm. I think the elevator broke down, she said simply. Gabriel pressed the lobby button several times, then pressed all the other buttons. Nothing happened. He pressed the emergency button. Total silence. Why isn't it working? Gabriel asked, now with an evident tone of nervousness in his voice. It happens sometimes, Rosa replied. An elevator is a machine, young Gabriel. Machines break down. Gabriel grabbed his top-of-the-line cell phone and looked at the screen. No signal, completely no signal. There's no internet. No signal! He exclaimed, shaking the device everywhere as if that would solve anything. Rosa watched the transformation happening in Gabriel's posture. Seconds ago, he was the confident and cruel boy who was humiliating her. Now he was beginning to show signs of desperation. Gabriel started banging on the elevator doors with his fists. "Hello, anyone? People are stuck in here," he shouted. "Anyone?" He banged harder, then even harder. The sound echoed through the cabin, but there was no response from outside. "Why isn't anyone answering?" Gabriel asked, looking at Rosa as if she had some magical answer. "Probably no one is around," Rosa said calmly. "The 15th floor is where the recreation area is. It's usually quiet at this time of the morning." Gabriel banged on the doors again, this time with more desperation. "This can't be happening. My father is waiting for me. We have an important meeting." Rosa remained calm, sat on the floor and leaned against the wall. She placed her bag of products next to her and her lunchbox on her lap. "What are you doing?" Gabriel asked, incredulous. "Why are you sitting down? We need to get out of here." "Young Gabriel," Rosa said patiently, "there's no point in panicking. Someone will notice the elevator is stopped, and they'll call the technicians. These things take time. It's better to save our energy." "Save our energy?" Gabriel repeated as if Rosa had spoken another language. "Are you crazy? We're stuck in here." "Stuck?" The word "stuck" echoed through the cabin and seemed to hit Gabriel like a punch to the stomach. For the first time in his life, he was in a situation that his father's money couldn't solve instantly. Gabriel started pacing back and forth in the small space of the elevator, which wasn't even 3 full steps. The suit, which had previously made him feel powerful, was now starting to bother him. The tie seemed to be tightening on its own around his neck. "It's hot in here," he murmured, pulling at his tie. "That's normal," Rosa said. "Her closed space heats up faster, especially with 2 people. Gabriel looked at Rosa with irritation. How could she be so calm? It was as if difficult situations didn't affect her. "Oh, you don't understand," he exclaimed. "I can't be stuck here. I have important things to do. My father will be furious." Rosa watched for a few moments before speaking. "Young Gabriel, you can take off your jacket if you're hot, and you can loosen your tie too. There's no one to impress in here." Rosa's observation hit Gabriel in a strange way. There's no one to impress. That's exactly what he had been doing with all those clothes. Trying to impress, trying to show his importance. But now, stuck in that elevator, the expensive clothes suddenly seemed only uncomfortable. Gabriel took off his jacket with abrupt movements and threw it on the floor. Then he loosened his tie but didn't take it off completely. "This can't be happening," he repeated, more to himself than to Rosa. For the first time in his life, Gabriel found himself in a situation where his social position, his money and his arrogance were completely useless. He was in the same boat as Rosa, or rather in the same broken elevator cabin, and Rosa, the woman he had humiliated minutes earlier, seemed to be the only one there who knew how to handle the situation. Before we continue this story, remember to subscribe to the channel and comment with your name and the city you're watching from. Minutes had passed since the elevator stopped, and Gabriel was becoming more and more desperate. What started as irritation was quickly turning into real panic. "Have you tried calling someone?" Gabriel asked for the 5th time, even though he knew Rosa didn't have a cell phone. "Young Gabriel, I already told you I don't have a phone," Rosa replied patiently. "And even if I did, there's no signal here anyway." Gabriel looked at his expensive iPhone as if it were a useless piece of plastic. For the first time in his life, all that technology was good for nothing. He had always had everything in the palm of his hand, literally. Any problem, any need. All it took was a few taps on the screen, and someone would solve it for him. "My father must be looking for me," Gabriel murmured, more to convince himself than to talk. "He'll realize I didn't get to the car. He'll send someone to look for me." Rosa didn't respond. She knew it wasn't quite like that. Rich people had many distractions, many things to take care of. Gabriel's father was probably on the phone in a business call, not even noticing his son's delay. Gabriel started banging on the doors again, this time harder, using both fists. "Help! Is anyone there? We're stuck!" he shouted until his voice was hoarse. The echo of the scream died in the silence. No answer. Gabriel rested his forehead against the cold elevator door. For the first time, Rosa saw something she had never seen before, real vulnerability in the boy's eyes. "What if we don't get out of here?" Gabriel asked in a small voice. "What if no one notices we're here?" "Someone will notice," Rosa said, "for sure. They always do. It might take time, but they always notice." "How can you be so sure?" Gabriel turned to her, and for the first time since they entered the elevator, there was no arrogance in his voice. There was fear. Rosa looked at him for a few seconds before answering, "Because I've been through worse situations, young Gabriel. Much worse." Gabriel stopped pacing and looked at Rosa with genuine curiosity. It was the first time he had truly seen her as a person who had a story to tell. "What kind of worse situations?" he asked almost unintentionally. Rosa hesitated. She wasn't in the habit of talking about her personal life, especially with her employers. But there, at that moment, seeing the boy's real desperation, she felt it might be important to share a little of her experience. "Once," she began slowly, "my 3 children and I were without electricity, without water, and almost without food for 3 days. I'd been laid off from my previous job and didn't have money to pay the bills." Gabriel stopped moving completely. 3 days without electricity, without water. He couldn't even imagine what that would be like. "My youngest son, Pedro, was only 5 at the time. He would ask why the fridge wasn't working, why he couldn't take a bath, and I didn't know what to say." Rosa paused, remembering those terrible days. "On the second day, we only had 1 package of cream crackers for the 4 of us. I divided it into small pieces to last the whole day." Gabriel felt something strange in his stomach. It wasn't hunger. He didn't even really know what true hunger was. It was a sense of discomfort, as if Rosa's words were stirring something deep in his consciousness. "And what did you do?" he asked, genuinely curious. "I prayed a lot," Rosa answered simply, "and on the 3rd day I got a temporary job at a family's house. They paid me in advance, and I was able to buy food and pay at least the electricity bill." Gabriel tried to imagine what it would be like to live through that situation. 3 days eating tiny pieces of crackers, 3 days in the dark, 3 days without being able to bathe. For him, who complained when the Wi-Fi took 5 seconds to connect, that seemed impossible to bear. "Didn't anyone help you?" he asked. "Yes, they did," Rosa smiled slightly. "Donna Conceição, a neighbor who also didn't have much, but she shared the little she had. It was she who told me about the temporary job." Gabriel was silent for a few minutes, processing this information. Poor people helping other poor people. He had never thought about that before. The elevator was still stopped and Gabriel was sweating, not just from the heat that was starting to build up in the enclosed space, but from the anxiety that was growing in his chest. "How can you be so calm?" he asked suddenly. Rosa looked at him with kindness. "I learned that panicking solves nothing, young Gabriel. It only wastes energy and makes us more nervous. It's better to accept the situation and think about what can be done." "But nothing can be done," Gabriel exclaimed. "We're stuck. There's no way out. There's no way to let anyone know." "That's true," Rosa agreed calmly. "So the only thing we can do is wait patiently." Gabriel looked at her as if she had spoken in Chinese. Wait patiently. He had never waited for anything patiently in his life. When he wanted something, he got it instantly. When he needed to go somewhere, a car was always available. When he was hungry, he just had to ask someone to prepare or buy whatever he wanted. "I don't know how to wait," Gabriel admitted. And these words came out of his mouth before he could think better. Rosa looked at him with an expression he couldn't decipher. It wasn't pity, it wasn't judgment. It was something like understanding. "Then this can be a good opportunity to learn," she said softly. Gabriel sat on the floor for the first time, on the other side of the elevator, away from Rosa. He leaned his back against the wall and hugged his knees. In that position, with his hair messy and his shirt crumpled, he looked exactly what he was, a scared 10-year-old boy. "I hate feeling like this," he murmured. "Like what?" "Powerless, unable to do anything." Rosa felt as if she understood perfectly. "It's a bad feeling, I know," she agreed. "But sometimes life puts us in these situations for us to learn something important." Gabriel looked up at her. "Learn what?" Rosa smiled lightly. "That you'll have to find out for yourself, young Gabriel." Half an hour had passed, and the heat inside the elevator was getting more intense. Gabriel had taken off his tie completely, and unbuttoned the first 2 buttons of his shirt. His expensive clothes, once a symbol of power, now seemed just uncomfortable fabric stuck to his sweaty body. Rosa, on the other hand, seemed perfectly adapted to the situation. She had carefully folded her white apron next to her bag. Her blue uniform was as impeccable as ever, and she showed no signs of nervousness or discomfort. "How can you be so normal?" Gabriel asked, observing Rosa's tranquility. "Normal how?" she asked back, not quite understanding what he meant. "Like you're not sweating, you're not nervous, you're not desperate," Gabriel gestured vaguely. "I'm about to have a nervous breakdown and you look like you're in a waiting room." Rosa laughed softly, a sound Gabriel had never heard before. It was a pleasant, warm laugh. "Young Gabriel, I've worked under 100-degree sun. I've cleaned houses without a fan, I've ironed clothes with a charcoal iron in scorching heat. This little bit of warmth is nothing." Gabriel tried to imagine what it would be like to work under a 100-degree sun. The most heat he had ever felt was when his bedroom air conditioner broke down once, and even then, his father called a technician in less than 2 hours. "Charcoal iron?" he asked, genuinely curious. "It's an old iron that heats up with charcoal, heavy as can be," Rosa explained. "My grandmother had one. When I was a little girl, I would sometimes help her iron clothes for others to earn a little extra money." "You worked when you were a child?" Gabriel asked, astonished. "Since I was 8, Rosa replied naturally. "Nothing heavy, of course. I'd help my mother sell sweets at the school gate, collect cans to sell, things like that." Gabriel was silent for a few moments. At 8 years old, he was concerned with choosing which video game he wanted for his birthday. He couldn't imagine having to work to help his family. "And why did you start working so young?" he asked. Rosa sighed softly. "My father died when I was 7. A heart attack at work. My mother was left alone with 4 children. Me, 2 older brothers and a younger sister. Everyone had to help out in some way." Gabriel felt a strange tightness in his chest. He imagined what it would be like to lose his father at 7. Although Rodrigo was strict and sometimes distant, Gabriel couldn't imagine life without him. "Was it very hard?" he asked in a softer voice. "It was," Rosa admitted. "Especially for my mother. She would cry in secret. She thought we didn't see, but children notice everything, don't they?" Gabriel nodded, even though he had no experience with that kind of situation. "But you know what made the biggest impression on me back then?" Rosa continued. "It was seeing how people helped. How a neighbor, Donna Maria, would always show up with an extra plate of food. Mr. Joaquim from the bakery would let us get bread on credit when we didn't have money. The school teacher would find used school supplies for us." Gabriel listened carefully, fascinated by a reality completely different from his own. "Poor people helping other poor people," Rosa continued. "No one had much, but everyone shared the little they had. That's how I learned that true wealth is in people's kindness." That sentence hit Gabriel in a strange way. Wealth in people's kindness. For him, wealth had always been money, expensive things, power. He had never thought of wealth as something that couldn't be bought. "And your siblings, what happened to them?" Gabriel asked. "My older brothers were able to finish high school and found jobs. One became a mechanic, the other works in a factory. My younger sister got married young and lives in the countryside with her children," Rosa said. "Everyone managed to get by, thank God." Gabriel noticed how Rosa spoke of her family with pride, even though they hadn't achieved anything he would consider important. They weren't businessmen. They weren't rich. They didn't have expensive cars or big houses, but Rosa spoke of them as if they were heroes. "And you, why didn't you get married again after your husband left?" Gabriel asked and immediately regretted the question. He thought he had been too indiscreet, but Rosa didn't seem bothered. "I thought about it a few times," she admitted, "but it was difficult. I had 3 small children to raise. I worked all day and I'd get home dead tired. I didn't have time or energy to date." Rosa paused, fiddling distractedly with the strap of her lunchbox. "And to be honest, after being abandoned once, I was afraid to trust another man. What if he left too? What if he hurt my children?" Gabriel had never thought that adults could be afraid of things like that. For him, adults always knew exactly what to do. They always had control over everything. "But don't you feel lonely?" he asked. Rosa smiled. "Lonely with 3 children, young Gabriel. I barely have time to breathe properly," she laughed. "And besides, I have my faith. I never feel truly alone." "Your faith?" Gabriel asked. Do you really believe God exists? Of course I do, Rosa replied without hesitation. Who do you think gives me the strength to wake up every day at 4:30 in the morning? Who gives me the patience to endure 3 crowded buses? Who helps me find a way to stretch my salary until the end of the month? Gabriel had never thought of God as someone who helped with practical day-to-day things. His family went to church once in a while, especially at Christmas and Easter, but it was more of a social obligation than something they truly believed in. Do you pray? He asked. Every day, Rosa answered. I pray asking for protection for my children, health for the whole family, strength to work, and I always give thanks for my job, for the food on the table, for having a roof over my head. Gabriel was impressed. Rosa was grateful for things he considered obvious, guaranteed. A job, food, a home. For him, these were things that simply existed, like the air he breathed. Have you ever been mad at God? Gabriel asked suddenly. Rosa thought for a few moments before answering. Yes, I have. When my husband abandoned me, when we went those days without electricity and without food, when Miguel got sick and I didn't have money for the medicine. I have been mad, yes. And what did you do? I kept praying anyway, Rosa smiled, because being mad wouldn't solve anything. And deep down I knew he wouldn't abandon me. Gabriel looked at Rosa as if he was seeing her for the first time. That simple woman, with her blue uniform and calloused hands, had an inner strength he had never imagined. A strength that didn't come from money or power, but from something much deeper. Gabriel was silent for a few minutes, absorbing everything Rosa had told him. For the first time in his life, he was really listening to the story of someone who came from a world completely different from his own. And the more he listened, the more he realized how small his own life was compared to the strength and experience of that woman. Rosa, he said finally, can I ask you something? Of course, young Gabriel. Have you ever felt like giving up on everything? Rosa looked at him with surprise. It was a very deep question from a 10-year-old boy. Many times, she admitted. There was a time right after my husband left that I would wake up every day thinking, I'm not going to make it. The boys were small, the bills were piling up. The money was never enough. Gabriel leaned forward, interested. What made you keep going? Rosa pointed to the lunchbox which was next to her. Them, my children. Every time I thought about giving up, I would look at those 3 little faces that depended only on me. Miguel asking why his father wasn't coming home. Ana crying from hunger. Little Pedro not understanding anything. She paused, her eyes shining with the memory. And I would think, if I give up, who will take care of them? Who will give them love, food, and education? Then I would take a deep breath and keep going. Gabriel tried to imagine himself in that situation. Having people depend on him, needing him to survive, was something completely outside his reality. How are they now? He asked, realizing that he really wanted to know more about Rosa's family. Rosa's face lit up completely. Oh, young Gabriel, they are my pride. Miguel, who is 16, is the smartest in his class. He works in the afternoon at a garage and studies in the morning. He wants to go to college for engineering. Gabriel was impressed. 16 years old and already working. He couldn't even imagine having that kind of responsibility. Anna is 14 and dreams of being a nurse. She takes care of her siblings when I'm not around. She helps the neighbors when someone gets sick. She has a heart as big as her grandmother's. Rosa continued with maternal pride shining in her eyes. And Pedro, who is 11, is an artist. He draws so beautifully. Whenever I have a little extra money, I buy him some colored pencils. His drawings decorate our whole house. Gabriel noticed something that made him uncomfortable. Rosa spoke of her children with more pride than he had ever heard his own parents speak of him. And her children didn't have half the opportunities he had. Do they know you work here? Gabriel asked. Of course they do. And they also know it's an honest and important job. I always taught them that there is no small job when it's done with dignity. Gabriel thought about what he had said to Rosa at the beginning of the elevator ride about how embarrassing it would be to explain to people that she worked cleaning rich people's houses. Now, listening to Rosa speak with such pride about her own work, he felt ashamed of his own words. Rosa, he said, hesitant, Were you hurt by the things I said earlier? Rosa looked at him with kindness. I was sad, yes, young Gabriel. I won't lie, but I wasn't mad. Why weren't you mad? I was very cruel to you. Rosa sighed softly. Because I know you're just a child repeating things you've heard. Children absorb everything they see and hear around them, right? And you live in a world where people feel they're better than others because they have more money. Gabriel was silent, processing those words. But that doesn't make what I did right, does it? He murmured. No, it doesn't, Rosa agreed. But it also doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you a person who still has a lot to learn about life. Gabriel felt tears beginning to form in his eyes. It was the first time someone had confronted him about his behavior, without yelling, without punishing, without humiliating him back. How do your children see you? He asked suddenly. Rosa smiled with pride. As a warrior, they say. Miguel always says I'm the strongest person he knows. Ana says she wants to be like me when she grows up, hardworking and brave. And Pedro? Pedro once drew our family and drew me with a superhero cape. Gabriel imagined the drawing and felt a pang of something he couldn't identify. Was it envy? Was it admiration? Was it sadness? My parents never talk about me like that, he admitted in a low voice. Rosa looked at him carefully. How do they talk about you? Gabriel thought for a few moments. My father always says I'll be a great businessman, that I'll take over his empire. My mother says I'm handsome, smart, that I'll conquer the world. And does that make you happy? Rosa asked. Gabriel hesitated. I don't know. I guess so. I mean, it's nice to be praised. But do you feel like they really know you? Rosa insisted gently. Gabriel was silent for a long time. It was a question he had never asked himself, but now that Rosa had asked, the answer seemed obvious. No, he admitted finally. I think they know the Gabriel they want me to be, not the Gabriel I really am. Rosa felt as if she understood him perfectly. And who are you really, young Gabriel? Gabriel looked at her, surprised by the question. I don't know. I never stopped to think about it. Then maybe it's a good time to start thinking, Rosa suggested kindly. Gabriel realized he was having the deepest conversation of his life with the person he had humiliated an hour ago. And that person was being kinder and more understanding with him than any adult in his life had ever been. Rosa, he said with a choked voice, I'm so sorry for the things I said. I really am. You didn't deserve that. Rosa smiled with tenderness. Thank you for apologizing, young Gabriel. That shows you have a good heart deep down. Gabriel felt the tears finally roll down his face. Tears of shame, of regret, but also of something new, a kind of relief for being honest for the first time in his life. You know what else impresses me about you? Gabriel asked, wiping his face with his shirt sleeve. What? You have so little compared to what I have, but you seem happy, truly happy. How is that possible? Rosa thought carefully before answering. Young Gabriel, happiness doesn't come from how much you have. It comes from knowing how to value what you have. I have 3 wonderful children who love me. So I have my health to work. I have a roof over my head. For me, that is wealth. Gabriel reflected on those words. He had hundreds of expensive things, but when was the last time he had really felt grateful for any of them? And you know what else? Rosa continued. True wealth is being able to sleep with a clear conscience. It's knowing that you haven't hurt anyone, that you've treated everyone with respect, that you've done good whenever you could. These words hit Gabriel like a punch to the stomach. When was the last time he had gone to sleep, thinking about how well he had treated someone that day? When was the last time he had made someone feel better instead of worse? And at that moment, stuck in that elevator with Rosa, Gabriel began to understand that maybe being stuck was exactly what he needed to start freeing himself from who he thought he was supposed to be. Almost an hour had passed since they got stuck, and Gabriel was starting to feel something he had never experienced before. True hunger. Not that craving for something delicious, but a real sense of emptiness in his stomach. Rosa, he said, looking at her lunchbox. Aren't you going to eat lunch? Rosa looked at the aluminum container and then at Gabriel. I was saving it for later, but if you're hungry... Me? No, Gabriel said quickly. I was just asking. You must be hungry. Rosa smiled softly. I'm used to not eating for a long time, young Gabriel. When you have little, you learn to wait. Gabriel felt uncomfortable with the answer. He had never gone more than 3 hours without eating something, and even then someone was always offering him food before he even asked. But you can eat, he said. I don't mind. Rosa hesitated for a few moments, then opened her lunchbox. The smell of the simple food, rice, beans, and a small piece of chicken, spread through the elevator. Gabriel's stomach rumbled loudly. Rosa heard the sound and looked at him with concern. "Young Gabriel, when was the last time you ate?" Gabriel thought he had had breakfast at 7:30 a.m., just a glass of juice, because he didn't feel like eating anything. "I only had juice for breakfast," he admitted. Rosa looked at him in surprise. "Just juice? But it's almost noon." Rosa was silent for a few moments, looking at her lunchbox and then at Gabriel. Then, without saying a word, she divided the food into 2 parts, pushing half of it toward him. "What are you doing?" Gabriel asked, surprised. "Sharing my food. You're hungry, aren't you?" Gabriel looked at the small portion Rosa had set aside for him. It was a small amount. Maybe 3 spoonfuls of rice, 2 of beans, and a tiny piece of chicken. "But then you'll have even less," he protested. "I'll be fine," Rosa said simply. "Eat, young Gabriel." Gabriel looked at the simple food in front of him. On any other day, he would have turned up his nose at that basic meal. But there, with his stomach rumbling, and after an hour of listening to Rosa's stories, that food seemed like the most generous thing anyone had ever offered him. "Rosa, I can't accept your food," he said, even though his mouth was watering. "Why not? You were hungry too." "It's true, but I've experienced real hunger, young Gabriel. I know how bad that feeling is. I don't wish that on anyone, not even on someone who treated me badly." Gabriel felt a lump in his throat. Here was a woman he had cruelly humiliated, sharing the only meal she had with him. It was an act of such pure kindness that he couldn't understand it. "You're a very good person, Rosa," he said sincerely. "I'm no saint, young Gabriel," Rosa laughed. "I've done things I'm not proud of too. I've talked badly about people behind their backs. I've been envious. I've wished I had other people's lives." Gabriel looked at her in surprise. "Really?" "Of course. I'm human, but I learned an important thing. We can choose what kind of person we want to be every day. Every morning when I wake up, I choose to try to be a better person than I was the day before." Gabriel reflected on those words. He had never thought about choosing what kind of person to be. He always thought people just were the way they were. "And when you can't be better?" he asked. "Then I ask for forgiveness from God, from the people I've hurt, and from myself. And the next day I try again." Gabriel thought about how many times he had hurt people, employees, schoolmates, even his own parents, without ever apologizing or trying to be different. "It must be hard," he murmured. "It is hard, yes. But you know what's even harder?" Rosa asked. Gabriel shook his head. "Living with the burden of having hurt people and never trying to fix it. That hurts a person's soul, young Gabriel. It hurts a lot." Gabriel felt as if Rosa was speaking directly to his conscience. How many times had he felt strange after being cruel to someone? How many times had he tried to ignore that bad feeling in his chest? "Rosa," he said, hesitant, "do you think it's possible for a person to truly change?" Rosa looked at him with affection. "Of course it is. I've seen very bad people become very good, and I've also seen good people become bad. We can always choose to change. Even someone like me," Gabriel asked in a small voice. Rosa moved a little closer to him and gently touched his arm. "Especially someone like you, young Gabriel. You're still a child. You have your whole life ahead of you. You can choose to be any kind of person you want." Gabriel felt tears in his eyes again, but this time they were different tears. They weren't from shame or regret, but from something like hope. "And what if I don't know how?" he asked. Rosa smiled with tenderness. "Then you start small. You treat one person kindly every day. You help someone in need. You say thank you and please, and you grow little by little." Gabriel nodded, absorbing every word. In that hot-stopped elevator, he was learning more about life than in all his 10 previous years. "Thank you, Rosa," he said, and for the first time in his life, he truly felt the meaning of that word. An hour and a half had passed, and the heat inside the elevator was becoming almost unbearable. Gabriel had completely taken off his dress shirt, leaving him in just a white undershirt. His hair, always perfectly styled, was stuck to his sweaty forehead. Rosa, even with all her self-control, also showed signs of the heat. She had pulled up the sleeves of her uniform and was using her white apron as an improvised fan. "Rosa," Gabriel said, looking at her with concern. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, young Gabriel. And you? Gabriel was about to say he was fine when he stopped to really think about the question. Physically, he was uncomfortable, hot, thirsty, tired, but mentally, emotionally, he felt different, lighter somehow. I think I'm okay, he said, surprised by his own answer. I mean, it's hot and I'm thirsty, but I feel strange in a good way. Rosa smiled, understanding exactly what he meant. That's how we feel when we start pretending to be someone we're not, she explained. And when we take off our masks and show who we really are inside. Gabriel thought about that. Since he woke up, he had been playing the role of the young businessman, the important heir, the rich and superior boy. But in the last few hours he had just been Gabriel, a scared, curious 10-year-old boy, capable of regretting and learning. Do you think my parents will like who I really am? He asked, vulnerable. Rosa thought carefully before answering. Young Gabriel, parents who truly love their children always prefer the honest version of them, even if that version isn't perfect. And what if they don't? Then you'll have to decide if you want to live being yourself, or if you want to spend your whole life pretending to be someone else just to please others. Gabriel was silent for a long time, absorbing this idea. He had never thought he had a choice about it. Suddenly a different sound echoed through the elevator. It was faint, distant, but it was definitely coming from outside. Did you hear that? Gabriel asked, getting up quickly. Rosa also stood up, listening intently. I did. Yes, they sound like voices. Gabriel pressed his ear against the elevator door. He was sure he could hear people talking outside, but he couldn't make out the words. Is anyone there? He shouted, banging on the door. Oh, we're stuck in here. Rosa joined him, also banging on the door. Help! 2 people are stuck in the elevator. For a few seconds, the voices outside stopped. Then they got louder and closer. Is anyone in there? A male voice shouted from outside. Yes! Gabriel and Rosa shouted together. We've been stuck for over an hour. Calm down! We'll get you out of there. The technicians are on their way up. Gabriel turned to Rosa, his eyes shining with relief and excitement. We're finally going to get out of here. But when he looked at Rosa, he noticed she didn't seem as excited as he was. In fact, she looked almost sad. Rosa, what's wrong? Aren't you happy? Rosa smiled, but it was a melancholic smile. I'm happy, yes, young Gabriel, of course I am. It's just that... What? Rosa hesitated before continuing. Just that when we get out of here, everything will go back to normal. You'll go back to being the rich and important young Gabriel, and I'll go back to being just the housekeeper. Gabriel felt a pang in his chest with those words. The idea of returning to normal suddenly didn't seem attractive at all. It doesn't have to be like that, he said impulsively. Rosa looked at him kindly, but also with a little skepticism. Young Gabriel, your usual life is waiting for you out there. Your parents, your friends, your school, your world. And I have mine. They're very different worlds, Gabriel felt panic. Not the panic of being stuck, but the panic of losing something precious he had found there in that elevator. But we can keep talking. Can you tell me more about your children? And I can... Gabriel stopped, realizing he didn't know exactly what he could offer Rosa. What value did he have besides his money? Rosa perceived his internal struggle and approached him. Young Gabriel, what happened here between us was very special. You showed me you have a good heart, and I hope I showed you that there are things in life more important than money. You did, Gabriel said with conviction. Much more important. Then that won't be lost when we leave here, Rosa continued. You'll take these lessons with you, and maybe you'll use them to be a better person. Outside, the sounds were getting louder. They seemed to be several men working, using tools. Folks were going to start opening the door. The voice shouted from outside. It might be noisy, but stay away from the door. Gabriel and Rosa stepped back, leaning against the back wall. Rosa, Gabriel said urgently, I need to tell you something before we get out of here. What is it, young Gabriel? Gabriel took a deep breath, gathering his courage. You changed my life today, you really did. I will never forget the things you taught me, and I promise I will try to be a better person. Rosa smiled, and this time the smile was genuine and happy. That's the best thing anyone could ever say to me, young Gabriel, and I also promise I will always treat you with respect. You're not just the housekeeper. You're an incredible person. Rosa felt tears in her eyes, but they were tears of joy. Thank you, young Gabriel. That means a lot to me. The sounds of tools became deafening for a few minutes. Sparks began to appear under the door, and Gabriel and Rosa stepped back even further, shielding their eyes with their hands. "Final step," a voice from outside shouted. "In 10 seconds, you'll be free." Gabriel's heart raced, but it wasn't just with relief. It was also with anxiety. What would it be like to get out? What would it be like to go back to his normal life after everything that had happened? With a loud metallic screech, the elevator doors finally forced themselves open. A gust of fresh air invaded the small space, and Gabriel took a deep breath, feeling as if he were breathing for the first time in hours. Outside were at least 6 people, 2 elevator technicians, 3 building maintenance staff, and the condominium manager, Mr. Antonio. "My God!" the manager exclaimed, seeing Gabriel and Rosa getting out of the elevator. "Young Gabriel, what a scare. Your father is frantically looking for you." Gabriel blinked several times, getting used to the hallway light. He was on the 15th floor, exactly where the elevator had stopped. "How long were we stuck?" he asked. "Almost 2 hours," one of the technicians replied. "You must be dehydrated. I'll get you some water." Rosa stepped out of the elevator right behind Gabriel, carrying her bag and apron. She was visibly tired and sweaty, but maintained her usual dignified posture. The manager barely looked at her. "Rosa, are you okay? You can go home and rest today if you want. I'll explain to Mrs. Patricia." "No need, Mr. Antonio, I'm fine to work," Rosa replied politely. Gabriel observed the interaction and felt something bothering him in his chest. It was as if Rosa had instantly become invisible to others again. "A young Gabriel," the manager continued, focusing all his attention on him. "Your father is in the office, but I've already called to let him know you've been found. He should be on his way up now." As if he had been summoned, Rodrigo Mendez stepped out of the neighboring elevator at that exact moment. Tall, impeccably dressed in an expensive suit, he radiated authority and impatience. "Gabriel," he called, walking quickly toward his son. "Where on earth have you been?" "I've been looking for you for 2 hours." Gabriel looked at his approaching father, and for the first time in his life didn't feel that mix of admiration and fear he always did. He just saw a man who was very concerned with schedules and commitments. "Dad, I got stuck in the elevator," Gabriel explained. Rodrigo looked at his son, noticing his messy appearance, crumpled shirt, disheveled hair, sweaty face. "Stuck in the elevator with whom?" Gabriel looked at Rosa, who had discreetly moved away to a corner of the hallway, trying not to get in the way of the important family's reunion. "How with Rosa, Dad, the Rosa who works at our house?" Rodrigo didn't even look in Rosa's direction. "Oh, yes. Well, the important thing is that you're okay. Let's go. We have to hurry. The meeting has already started, and the clients are waiting for me." Gabriel looked at his father in surprise. "Dad, aren't you even going to ask if I'm okay? If it was scary being stuck?" Rodrigo stopped and looked at Gabriel with impatience. "Are you okay?" "Yes, you are. Nothing serious happened." "These things happen. Let's go, Gabriel." Gabriel felt a pang of disappointment. After 2 hours of anguish, his and probably his father's too, Rodrigo's only concern was with the missed business meeting. "Dad," Gabriel said, taking a deep breath, "I need to thank Rosa. She helped me a lot while we were stuck." Rodrigo glanced quickly at Rosa, as if seeing her for the first time. "Oh, of course, Rosa. Thank you for taking care of Gabriel. You can go back to work." And that was it. No heartfelt thanks, no real recognition, no questions about how she was feeling. Gabriel looked at Rosa, who had lowered her eyes and given a small, polite smile. "You're welcome, Mr. Rodrigo. It was a pleasure to help young Gabriel." But Gabriel saw something in Rosa's eyes that broke him inside. She had gone back to being just the housekeeper, the wise and courageous woman who had shared food with him, who had comforted him, who had changed his perspective on life, had disappeared in everyone's eyes but his. "Let's go, Gabriel," Rodrigo insisted, already walking toward the elevator. Gabriel looked at Rosa one last time. She gave him a small but genuine smile and whispered softly, "Remember our conversations, young Gabriel." Gabriel nodded and began to follow his father, but after a few steps he stopped. "Dad, wait a second." He walked back to where Rosa was, took her hand and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Thank you, Rosa, from the bottom of my heart. You were incredible today. You are a very special person." Rosa smiled, surprised and moved by Gabriel's public gesture. Thank you, young Gabriel. You are very special too. Rodrigo watched the scene with a frown, clearly not understanding why his son was making such a big deal about the housekeeper. Gabriel, what's gotten into you? Let's go. Gabriel joined his father in the elevator, but continued to look at Rosa until the doors closed. As soon as they were alone, Rodrigo turned to Gabriel. What was that whole scene about? Since when do you treat employees like that? Gabriel looked at his father, choosing his words carefully. Dad, Rosa helped me a lot today. When I was scared, she calmed me down. When I was hungry, she shared her food with me. She was kind and brave. Rodrigo rolled his eyes. Gabriel, that's what we pay her for, to take care of you when necessary. There's no need for all this drama. It wasn't drama, Dad, it was gratitude. Rodrigo looked at his son with a strange expression. There was something different in Gabriel's tone of voice, a confidence that wasn't there this morning. Well, anyway, now we need to focus on the meeting. You're going to behave appropriately in front of the clients, right? Gabriel nodded, but inside he was thinking about Rosa, probably climbing the stairs to the basement to get the cleaning supplies, returning to her routine as if nothing had happened. But for Gabriel, everything had changed, and he knew Rosa was right. He would carry those lessons forever. The business meeting was taking place in his father's office, on the 30th floor of the same building. Gabriel knew that environment well, a gigantic room with a mahogany table that cost more than a car, Italian leather armchairs, and a panoramic view of the city that always impressed him. But on that day, entering the room next to his father, Gabriel saw everything with different eyes. He thought about how many families like Rosa's could live for a whole year on the money spent just on that room. Gentlemen, Rodrigo announced to the three men in suits who were waiting at the table. I apologize for the delay. We had a small setback with the elevator. This is my son, Gabriel, whom I mentioned to you. The men smiled politely, and Gabriel greeted each one with a handshake, as his father had taught him. But his mind was elsewhere. Gabriel is going to start participating in meetings to learn about business, Rodrigo explained as they all sat down. He needs to understand how the corporate world works. One of the men, whom Gabriel discovered was Mr. Martinez, smiled at him. Great idea, Rodrigo. It's never too early to start. Gabriel, your father told me you are already interested in following in his footsteps. Gabriel was about to answer automatically with yes, as he always did, when he remembered Rosa's question. Who are you really, young Gabriel? Actually, Gabriel said slowly, I don't really know what I want to be when I grow up yet. Rodrigo looked at his son with surprise and slight discomfort. Gabriel has always been modest, he said quickly, trying to fix the answer. Of course, he'll work with me. It's a family tradition. The meeting continued for over an hour with the men discussing a new real estate development. Gabriel tried to pay attention, but his mind kept going back to Rosa and her lessons. It was then that he heard something that made him pay real attention for the first time. And, of course, we'll need to remove those people who are illegally occupying the land, Mr. Martinez said. About 20 families. No big deal. Remove them how? Gabriel asked, interrupting the conversation. The men looked at him, surprised by the interruption. What do you mean, Gabriel? His father asked. Those 20 families, where are they going to live if you take them out of there? Rodrigo laughed, as if his son's question were naive. Gabriel, that's not our problem. They're illegally occupying land we bought. They'll have to find another place. Gabriel's stomach churned. He thought of Rosa and her 3 children. What if it were them being removed from their homes? But Dad, Gabriel insisted, what if they have nowhere to go? Gabriel, Rodrigo said in a warning tone, that's not a matter for a child. Please be quiet and observe. Gabriel remained silent for the rest of the meeting, but he couldn't stop thinking. 20 families, probably 60 or 80 people, children like him, mothers like Rosa. When the meeting ended and the men said goodbye, Rodrigo turned to Gabriel. Gabriel, what's gotten into you today? Asking inappropriate questions in front of clients. Gabriel took a deep breath, remembering Rosa's words about choosing what kind of person to be. Dad, I just wanted to understand. Those families, it's not their fault they're poor. Rodrigo sighed as if he were dealing with a rebellious teenager. Gabriel, the business world is not a fairy tale. Sometimes we have to make difficult decisions. That's how it works. But does it have to work that way? Gabriel asked genuinely. Rodrigo stopped arranging the papers and looked at his son carefully. "Gabriel, where are these questions coming from? You've never been interested in this kind of thing before." Gabriel hesitated. How could he explain that he had learned more about life in 2 hours stuck in an elevator than in 10 years of privilege? "Dad, today I talked a lot with Rosa while we were stuck, and she told me how hard it is to be poor, how it is to have to choose between paying rent or buying food, how it is to live in a small house with 3 children and not have money to buy colored pencils." Rodrigo rolled his eyes. "Gabriel, you can't let sad stories affect you like this. The world is full of people with difficulties. If we were to help everyone, there would be nothing left for us." Gabriel looked at his father with a mixture of disappointment and determination. "Dad, do you think we need all this?" He gestured to the luxurious room. "Honestly, Gabriel? This conversation is pointless. We worked hard to have what we have. Rosa also works hard. Dad, she woke up at 4:30 in the morning today, took 3 buses to get here at 7 a.m., and will work until 5 p.m., and even then, she can barely pay the bills." Rodrigo looked at Gabriel with growing strangeness. "Gabriel, you're being influenced by inappropriate conversations. Rosa is an employee. She does her job. She gets her salary. It's a fair relationship." Gabriel thought about Rosa's salary, which wasn't even enough to buy the tie he had worn that day. "Dad," he said courageously, "do you think Rosa's salary is really fair?" Rodrigo lost his patience. "Gabriel, enough. I don't know what kind of conversation you had in that elevator, but you're confused. Rosa is a housekeeper. We are the employers. She does her job. We pay what the market dictates. That's how the world works." Gabriel looked at his father and saw, perhaps for the first time, not a hero or a role model, but a man who had become so accustomed to his own privilege that he could no longer see the humanity of the people around him. "Dad," Gabriel said calmly, "can I ask you something?" "What?" "Can I increase Rosa's salary with my allowance?" Rodrigo looked at Gabriel as if he had completely lost his mind. "Gabriel, your allowance is for you to buy your things, not to give away to employees." Gabriel thought about his monthly allowance, over $400 that he usually spent on video games and treats he didn't even always eat. "Dad, I don't need $400 a month. I can live on $200 and give $200 to Rosa." Rodrigo shook his head. "No, Gabriel, and I don't want to hear about this again. You're confused because of the scare today. Tomorrow you'll think differently." But Gabriel knew he wouldn't think differently. He knew he had discovered something important in that elevator, something he could no longer ignore. And no matter if his father didn't understand, no matter if the world didn't change overnight, Gabriel had made a decision. He would be different. The next morning, Gabriel woke up with a purpose different from any other day of his life. It was 6 a.m. when he got out of bed, an hour earlier than usual. He put on simple clothes, jeans, and a basic t-shirt, instead of the expensive school uniform he was used to wearing. Rosa would arrive at 7 a.m. as always. Gabriel wanted to be awake to greet her. He went down to the kitchen and for the first time in his life tried to make his own breakfast. He wasn't sure how, but he managed to toast 2 slices of bread and pour a glass of juice. As he ate, he thought about the plan he had concocted in his mind overnight. At 7 a.m. sharp, he heard the key turn in the lock. Rosa entered through the service door, as always, carrying her bag and wearing her impeccable blue uniform. "Good morning, young Gabriel," she said, surprised to see him awake so early. "Are you okay? Didn't you have nightmares about the elevator?" Gabriel smiled. Even after everything that had happened, Rosa still worried about him. "Good morning, Rosa. No, I didn't have nightmares. In fact, I fell asleep thinking about our conversations." Rosa hung her bag on the hanger in the service area and went to the kitchen to start work. "That's good, young Gabriel. It was quite an experience, wasn't it?" Gabriel followed her to the kitchen, something he had never done before. "Rosa, I need to tell you something." Rosa stopped organizing the cleaning products and looked at him carefully. "What is it, young Gabriel?" Gabriel took a deep breath and pulled a white envelope out of his pocket. "I want to give you this." Rosa looked at the envelope with suspicion. "What is this?" "Open it." Rosa opened the envelope carefully and her eyes widened. Inside were $200 in bills. "Young Gabriel, what is this?" "I can't accept it." "It's half of my allowance for this month," Gabriel explained, "and it's going to be like this every month from now on." Rosa shook her head vigorously. No, no, no. I can't accept money from you, young Gabriel. What will your parents think? Gabriel had already predicted this reaction. Rosa, do you remember what you told me yesterday? That when someone offers you something with kindness, you accept it. Rosa was speechless for a few seconds. But, young Gabriel, this is different. This is a lot of money. It's not to me, Gabriel said honestly. To me, it's just half of my allowance. But to you, it can mean school supplies for your children or medicine if someone gets sick or better food on the table. Rosa felt tears in her eyes. Young Gabriel, you are so kind, but I can't. It wouldn't be right. Gabriel approached her and took her calloused hands. Rosa, yesterday you shared your food with me when I was hungry. You comforted me when I was scared. You taught me things about life that no one had ever taught me. Now let me do something for you too. Rosa looked at the 10-year-old boy in front of her and saw a maturity that wasn't there the day before. Do your parents know about this? She asked. Gabriel hesitated for just a second. No, they wouldn't understand. But it's my money, Rosa, my allowance. I can do what I want with it. Rosa continued to hesitate, holding the envelope as if it would burn her hands. And what if they find out? What if I lose my job? They won't find out, Gabriel said with conviction. And even if they do, I'll explain that it was my idea. You won't lose your job because of this. Rosa looked at the money one more time. $200, it was almost half of her monthly salary. With that money, she could buy new shoes for Pedro, who was wearing torn sneakers. She could pay for the English course Anna so wanted to take. It could give her family's tight budget a little breathing room. Young Gabriel, she said with a choked voice, why are you doing this? Gabriel thought about the question for a few moments, because yesterday in that elevator, you showed me that there are good people in the world, people who share the little they have, people who treat others with kindness even when they are treated badly. And I want to be that kind of person too. Rosa could no longer hold back her tears. You already are that kind of person, young Gabriel. Yesterday you apologized for hurting me. Today you are here wanting to help me. You have a very good heart. So will you accept? Gabriel asked hopefully. Rosa looked at the envelope, then at Gabriel, then back at the envelope. I accept, she said finally, but with one condition. What? If your parents find out and get mad, you promise me you'll let me give the money back without a fight. Gabriel nodded immediately. I promise. Rosa put the envelope in her uniform pocket and hugged Gabriel. It was a tight, warm hug, full of gratitude and affection. Thank you so much, young Gabriel. You have no idea how much this means to me. Gabriel hugged her back, feeling happier than he had felt in a long time. At that moment, Rodrigo appeared in the kitchen, already dressed for work. He stopped abruptly at the sight, his son hugging the housekeeper. What's going on here? He asked with a tone of suspicion. Gabriel and Rosa quickly separated. Rosa lowered her head in embarrassment. Good morning, Dad, Gabriel said, trying to sound natural. I was just thanking Rosa again for yesterday. Rodrigo narrowed his eyes. Gabriel, you need to stop with this obsession. Rosa did what any employee would do. You don't need to be thanking her all the time. Gabriel felt irritation growing in his chest, but forced himself to remain calm. Sorry, Dad. Rodrigo turned to Rosa. Rosa, is the coffee ready? I'll prepare it now, Mr. Rodrigo. She replied, quickly returning to work. Rodrigo left the kitchen and Gabriel stayed, watching Rosa prepare the coffee. She worked efficiently as always, but there was something different in her movements, a lightness that wasn't there the day before. When she served coffee to Rodrigo in the dining room, Gabriel noticed that she smiled differently. It wasn't just her usual polite smile. It was a genuine smile from someone who had received a true act of kindness. And Gabriel knew he had made the right decision. Regardless of what his father thought, regardless of what anyone thought, he had chosen to be the kind of person Rosa had shown him it was possible to be. A person who saw the humanity in others, a person who used his privileges to do good, a person who had learned that true wealth was in the ability to touch someone's heart. 3 months had passed since the day of the elevator. Gabriel kept his word. Every month he discreetly gave half of his allowance to Rosa, but more importantly, his way of treating her had changed completely and forever. Now every morning, Gabriel made a point of greeting Rosa in person. He would ask about her children, about how her weekend was, about whether she needed anything. Rosa, initially surprised by the attention, had gotten used to the boy's genuine kindness. The extra $200 a month had transformed Rosa's family's life in a way Gabriel couldn't even imagine. Miguel was able to buy the books he needed for his college prep course. Anna enrolled in the English course she had dreamed of taking. Pedro had a new box of colored pencils and quality drawing paper. And Rosa, for the first time in years, could sleep without worrying if the money would last until the end of the month. But the changes didn't stop there. Gabriel had begun to question other things in his privileged life. He stopped wasting food, started valuing the gifts he received more, and even the way he treated his schoolmates had changed. At school, when he saw a classmate being cruel to someone less fortunate, Gabriel would intervene, not aggressively, but with the wisdom he had learned from Rosa, treating everyone with dignity and respect. His parents noticed the changes, but couldn't understand where they came from. Rodrigo would sometimes comment to Patricia that Gabriel was different, more mature, but they attributed it to the boy's natural growth. On that Thursday morning, 3 months after the elevator incident, something extraordinary was about to happen. Gabriel had gone down for breakfast when he heard raised voices coming from the kitchen. He immediately recognized his father's voice, speaking in a louder tone than usual. "Rosa, I need to talk to you." Gabriel approached the kitchen door discreetly and listened to the conversation. "Yes, Mr. Rodrigo, is something wrong?" Rosa asked, her voice slightly nervous. "I found out about the money." Gabriel's heart raced. His father had found out about the allowance. "What money, sir?" Rosa asked, but her voice betrayed that she knew exactly what he was talking about. "Rosa, let's not pretend. I know Gabriel is giving you money every month." "A lot of money." There were a few seconds of silence. Then Rosa sighed. "Mr. Rodrigo, I can explain." "Can you explain how you're accepting money from a 10-year-old child?" Rodrigo's voice was filled with indignation, and Gabriel felt panic. Rosa could be fired because of him. Gabriel took a deep breath and entered the kitchen, determined to take full responsibility. "Dad, stop," he said firmly. Rodrigo and Rosa turned to him, both surprised. "Gabriel, go back to your room." "This is an adult conversation," Rodrigo said dryly. "No, Dad, this is about me, too. I'm the one who gave the money to Rosa. It was my idea." Rodrigo looked at his son with a mixture of anger and disappointment. "Gabriel, you don't understand what you're doing. This is manipulation. She's taking advantage of you." "She's not taking advantage of anything," Gabriel exclaimed, his voice rising. "I offered the money because I wanted to help." "Gabriel, you're a child. You don't know how the world works." "I do know how the world works," Gabriel replied, all the frustration of 3 months finally exploding. "I know there are people like Rosa who work 16 hours a day and still can barely pay the bills. I know that while I get $400 in allowance to spend on silly things, she makes a salary that barely supports 3 children." Rodrigo was silent, surprised by the intensity of his son's response. "Gabriel," he said in a low voice. "No, Dad, you need to listen to me," Gabriel continued. "Rosa isn't taking advantage of me. She tried to refuse the money several times. She only accepted because I insisted, because I explained that it was important for me to be able to help someone." Rosa watched the argument in silence, torn between the pride she felt for Gabriel and the worry about her job. "Gabriel," Rodrigo said, trying to regain authority, "you can't just go around giving money to employees. It sets a dangerous precedent." "Dad, you want to know what the dangerous precedent is?" Gabriel asked with surprising maturity in his voice. "It's me growing up thinking that people's worth is only measured by how much money they have. It's me becoming an adult who can't see the humanity in others." Rodrigo was quiet for a few moments, processing his son's words. "And you know how I learned that?" Gabriel continued. "It was on that day in the elevator, when I was stuck in there with Rosa, and I discovered that she is one of the bravest and kindest people I know. When she shared the only food she had with me, even though I had been cruel to her." Gabriel looked at Rosa, who had tears in her eyes. "Rosa taught me that a person's value isn't in what they have, but in who they are. And she is an incredible person, Dad. She's hardworking, honest, brave. She raises her children alone, and yet she always has a kind smile and a word of affection to give." Rodrigo looked at Rosa, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in 5 years. "Dad," Gabriel continued in a softer voice now, "I don't want to grow up being the kind of person who only sees others as employees. I want to be the kind of person who recognizes when someone deserves to be valued." The kitchen was silent for a long moment. Rodrigo looked alternately at Gabriel and Rosa, clearly struggling with conflicting thoughts. Finally, he sighed deeply. "Rosa," he said, "I'm sorry if at any point you felt undervalued in this house." Rosa looked at him in surprise. "You work hard. You are dedicated, and you deserve to be treated with more respect than I have shown." Rodrigo paused, then continued. "And Gabriel, you're right. About many things. I got lost in all the work and all the money and forgot to teach you what really matters." Gabriel felt tears in his own eyes. "From today on," Rodrigo announced, "Rosa, you will receive a 50% raise in your salary. And Gabriel, you can continue to give half of your allowance to whoever you want to help. In fact, I'm proud of you for making that decision on your own." Rosa could no longer hold back her tears. "Mr. Rodrigo, thank you so much. Thank you so much." Rodrigo approached Rosa and for the first time offered his hand to her in a respectful handshake. "Thank you, Rosa, for taking such good care of our family and for teaching my son to be a better person." Rosa shook his hand, moved. Gabriel looked at the scene and smiled. It wasn't just a smile of happiness, but of fulfillment. He had achieved something that seemed impossible. He had not only changed himself, but also touched his father's heart. "You know what, Rosa?" Gabriel said, approaching her. "You were right about elevators." "What do you mean, young Gabriel?" she asked, smiling through her tears. "You said that elevators go up and down. But a person's character is what shows who they really are." Gabriel looked at his father, then back at Rosa. "In that elevator, I discovered who I really want to be. And today I discovered that it's never too late for a person to change and become better." Rosa smiled and hugged Gabriel, and this time Rodrigo saw nothing inappropriate in the scene. He saw only a boy who had learned one of life's most important lessons, that a person's true worth is not measured by what they have, but by what they are capable of giving to others. And at that moment, in the kitchen of a luxurious apartment, three people from completely different worlds discovered that, in the end, what truly matters is the ability to see and value each other's humanity. After all, as Rosa always knew, elevators go up and down, but a person's character is what shows who they really are. If you liked this story, please like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos.